The Victorian election will be held this Saturday, the 27th of November, and it's really important that Victorians know what their candidates stand for and know what the policies of the parties are. Peter, can you tell us, is there really a difference between the political parties as we come to this election?
When it comes to the major parties, there is a major difference on what are called moral issues. For us, that really means life, liberty, lifestyle and family issues, and that's where the major difference is on policies that will change the way we live.
Peter, you mentioned lifestyle. What do you mean by lifestyle issues?
Well, the Bible says righteousness exalts a nation and sin is a reproach. And what we've seen over recent years are governments that are changing the lifestyle of this nation. From a Christian nation, they call it a secular nation, but lifestyle itself can be the life we lead. And today we've seen lifestyles such as homosexuality, transgender. These are now designated as people's lifestyle, and governments are legislating to make them natural and normal. We know they're not, and they will undermine society. So with that as a background, Jenny, maybe you can explain to us what evidence we have of the difference between the major parties, and then after that maybe we'll talk briefly about the minor parties.
Well, first of all, what we've done at Saltshakers and with other organisations is that we've looked at the policies of the parties, and we've put out the Christian Values Checklist a couple of weeks ago, where we look at a range of these moral issues and compare the policies of the parties. And that's available at Saltshakers' website. That's www.saltshakers.org.au. So with the checklist, that compares the parties. So we wanted to know how candidates themselves might approach the issues. So we looked at the voting record of the politicians over the past 4 years, and we've compared that with a chart available on our website. But what we've done in the last few days is we've actually looked at how the members of the parties voted on those same issues across the last 4 years, and we've found that there's been quite an amazing difference between the major parties. On the issue of abortion, for instance, we see that 81% of the Labor MPs voted for the abortion legislation, whereas with the Liberal Party it was only 26%. When we consider the Greens Party, all 3 members actually voted for it, giving them a 100% approval rating for the abortion issue.
What was it on lifestyle issues?
Well, one of the key things that happened in the last Parliament was the Relationship Register Bill, and we found there that that was put up by the Labor Party and supported fully by the Greens, so they both had 100% of their members voting for that legislation. When we looked at the Liberal Party, we found that 38% of the Liberals voted for that, and none of the National Party voted for it.
That's still a large number of Liberals, but would the Liberals have actually initiated that legislation had it been them in government?
That's an important point, because we know with the abortion bill, for instance, that was very much promoted by the Labor government. It would never have been put up by the Liberal and National parties. And the same with the lifestyle issues. Things like IVF for lesbians, the surrogacy legislation, and in particular this Relationship Register Bill, they weren't being pushed by the Liberal Party or the coalition, and we don't expect that they would have been put up during a Liberal government. So often we see that it's a particular government that's in power has the choice as to what sort of legislation they promote.
What choice do people have apart from voting for the major parties?
We see that there are a number of smaller parties actually running in this election, and it's interesting that in each of those cases none of them would actually support this sort of legislation. So we've got the Democratic Labor Party, the Christian Democratic Party and Family First, and none of those would support this sort of legislation.
So is it feasible to put them as number 1 on your ballot paper and then put, say, a major party? Because minor parties really play a minor role, but at least they might allow us to tell the major parties that we expect better values on those issues.
That's a good way to actually record your vote. So you can vote for a small party that you like, and then your vote's not wasted because you can always preference your major party of choice. And that means that we can actually send a message to the major parties as well that we're concerned about some of the policies that they're promoting.
What about below the line or above the line in the upper house? Should we vote for the way the party give their preferences, or should we select our own preferences?
We think it's important that you actually consider selecting your own preferences, that is voting below the line. If you look at the Electoral Commission website, they actually list the preferences that have been put in by the parties. So if you vote for, say, the Liberal Party, how their vote would be allocated across the other candidates. So you can do that if you want to, but it's important to know how those parties have done it. So in some cases, for instance, we've seen major parties preference parties that we wouldn't support. And so,
like the Sex Party, for instance, is allocated second preference to the Liberal Party in some places. Why would they do that?
well, sometimes parties allocate preferences because they think that they can actually get a return deal, so that in this case the Sex Party is actually preference the Liberal Party number 2 in a number of electorates. So they think that they can get some electoral advantage out of that. But unfortunately what it does is it undermines the smaller parties, the Conservative parties in those electorates.
So it's really important that at this election we choose where our votes go and that we put our numbers down the ticket as we want them, not to be dictated to by the party. We hope that all Christians will take an active role in deciding who should be our governing MPs for the next 3 years. It is important, it's vital that we make a difference in society.